Very happy to be amidst all of you all here today. We are going to talk on this very crucial and important subject, which is called as Stop Worrying, Start Living. I'm sure all of you all who are here have gone through so many phases of worrying. And somewhere down the line, when we are in the midst of so much of anxiety and so much of pressure in all different directions, whether it is worrying about relationships, whether it is worrying about work pressure, whether it is worrying about different anxieties that could come up in life, especially the younger generation, there are so many things that could get us to start worrying. Something as small as our Facebook likes or dislikes. Something as small as a comment on Instagram, Something as small as a message that pops up on WhatsApp. Somebody you love, somebody you really connect very strongly with. Sometimes these chats are so confusing, What I want to say and what you understand, There's a big gap many times, So, there's a lot of reasons to worry, naturally, So the question is, how do you stop worrying and start living? And sometimes, the quantum of worry is so much, and the variety of worry is so much, we often wonder, are we at all living? So worry is an integral part of life, whether we like it or not. Different people worry differently. Here is a picture of two ends of the spectrum, a small child and an old man. When a small child looks at a clock, the child is worried how to speed up the clock. Because for a small child, being a small child is quite frustrating, I know a small boy who used to come to our temple every day, and this boy was a little chubby, a little fat, round-faced, a lot of baby fat around, And every time somebody would meet him, every time an adult would meet him, they would poke his tummy, they would, shake his cheeks, and I could see on his face, his eyes were screaming, when will I grow up, For a small child, they just want to grow up. But at the same clock, an old man looks, or an old woman looks at a clock. The desperation how to slow the clock down. Because the faster the clock ticks, the closer you are towards the end. So life passes in worrying all the time. There is a very interesting verse in the Niti Shastra, which says, Chita chinta samahayukta bindu matra visheshataha nirjivam dahate chita sajivam dahate chinta. This verse says, there are two words in Sanskrit. There's a word called Chita. Chita means funeral fire. And Chinta means worry. So these two words, they're very similar in nature. They look, Chita, Chinta, they sound very similar. But that's not all. The word Chita, Nirjivam Dahate Chita means after a person is dead, Chita burns you once. The funeral fire burns you once. Sajivam Dahate Chinta means while a person is alive, worries burn you constantly. I call life as www.com. What is the meaning of that? In every phase of life, there is this www.com. When a child is very small, what is the www.com of life? Write.com. Exams. They constantly have to keep writing exams. In India especially, children are harassed by exams. I don't know if the same thing in Australia. Exams are such a pressure, right? I know at least in Australia, till the 6th class, there's no exams. And suddenly in 6th, there's exams and so much pressure, it kind of becomes unnatural for a mind to cope up. So write.com means you have to keep writing exams. It's a pressure for any child. As a person grows older and you start working, the next phase is www.com is work.com. So much pressure of work. And why do you work? For the next thing, which is wealth.com. To earn money. Yeah. And naturally, when you work so hard and you try to accumulate money and earn, there is going to be worry.com. There's going to be a lot of pressure and anxiety, a lot of worries. And how do you handle all those worries? Then comes the next www.com, which is wine.com. There is no pressure that a glass of wine can't handle. So drink, forget all the pressures, all the worries of life. And then, after drinking, after trying everything else that you can try to deal with all those worries, you end up in what is called as weep.com. Crying. Yeah. In a sense, this is the www.com of life. So, difficulties are an integral part of life. Difficulties per se don't make them worries. When you dwell on those difficulties too much, then those difficulties become worries. Whether to be affected or not is a choice. Difficulties, whether they will come or no, is no choice. They will come. But whether to be affected by those difficulties or no is a choice that each one of us have. I'll tell you an experience that I had many years back when I was traveling on a boat on a river in India. This is the river Ganga, a very intensely flowing river. It was a huge river. We were 3 of us on a boat, and there was a boatman who was, oaring the boat. When we were right in the middle of the river, we saw something very interesting, actually very scary. We saw that there was bubbles of water, actually this huge amount of water piled up in the bottom of the boat. And we saw that the level of the water was just increasing slowly. So we asked the boatman, what's happening here? This boatman said, there is a hole in the boat. So we were staring at him, So weird, he brought the boat in the middle of the river and he's telling us there's a hole in the boat. We asked him, so he asked us, do you know swimming? Unfortunately, none of us knew swimming, So we said, no. Then he gave us a bucket. He said, keep throwing the water out if you want to live, You can imagine the intensity with which we're, taking out the water and throwing it out of the boat. Essentially, our mind is like a boat. And all the difficulties, all the worries around us are like a river, like an ocean actually. Unlimited amount of difficulties outside, around us. Whether the water outside, the difficulties outside enter the mind depends on whether your mind has a hole in it. If there is one small hole in it, all the waters outside will come inside. But if you somehow manage to not be affected by those worries that are outside, provided you know how to plug that hole, it's our choice. During the Nazi camps, there's a very interesting story that happened. It's a true story. There was a man who was living in the Nazi camps. He's a victim, suffering like anything. But this man always had a smile on his face, though he was suffering himself on a personal level. In fact, this man, he was so happy in such a bad situation that the soldiers who were torturing him, they would come to him for counseling. This man had a very weird habit. Everywhere he would draw butterflies. Wherever he got space, on the walls, on the floor, on any piece of paper, on the canvases, practically everywhere he would draw butterflies. So somebody asked him, why do you draw so many butterflies? Why do you draw butterflies all over the place? And this man gave a very interesting answer. He said, One day, when I was suffering in these camps very intensely, I had an experience that changed my life completely. It changed my perception of life completely. This man said, one day I saw a cocoon in which there was a worm that was struggling to come out of the cocoon. And I kept observing this worm, and this worm was struggling so badly. It was just breaking out from the cocoon. It's all kinds of liquids coming out of it, and it was really struggling very hard. And in a few days, I saw that this worm somehow managed to get out of the cocoon and fly like a butterfly. It became a butterfly and just flew away. This man, that day, he had a realization. The realization that he had was that I am right now like this worm, stuck in this cocoon. This camp is like a cocoon. But he said, he thought for himself, that if I allow one thought to remain in my mind, very soon I'm going to be flying like a butterfly. Very soon, if I have faith in something higher, in higher powers, very soon I'll be liberated from this bondage that I am in. Right now it may seem to be like a suffering, but very soon I'll be out. This man, from the day he had this thought, he was just hoping and waiting for, something miraculous to happen and him to get out. Eventually, when the Nazi camps, disintegrated at some point, out of the very few people who survived, this man was one of them. And eventually he went on to become a motivational speaker, writing books, inspiring thousands of people. Why? Because he was one of those who, during the most difficult times of his life, he, rather than succumbing to worries, succumbing to those difficulties, he decided to focus on something better waiting for him later. Worry, it gives a small thing a big shadow. The issue is not as big as the mind makes it. Generally, the problems that we face in our lives are very petty and small things. I have dealt with thousands of people who have relationship issues. I have dealt with thousands of people who have problems in their lives. But I'll tell you, when they tell the problem to me, I'm a neutral party. I'm not really affected by the problem. But whenever I hear problems from people, one of the first things that comes in my mind is, so what? You know why? Because most of the problems that people face are actually very petty problems, which actually cause phenomenal amount of worries. I'll give you an example. How do you understand this? If you carry a small brick in your hand, the brick is not very heavy. You can easily carry it. But if I carry the brick for an hour, the brick does appear to be a little heavier. The weight has not changed. But essentially, you have been holding it for an hour. If you hold the same brick in your hand for 24 hours, the brick definitely has become heavy. It has now become a wall. Almost like a wall. If you hold the brick in your hand for 7 days, it has become not a brick. It's not even a wall now, it is a house. It's practically as heavy as a house. And if you hold it for 20 days, it becomes a mountain. The same brick will weigh heavier and heavier and heavier the more you hold it. That's how a worry is. One thought, when you hold it for a sufficient amount of time, it becomes magnified to an extent that you can't handle it anymore. And generally, most people, when they worry, they're actually not going anywhere. Many people feel that when I think about a problem, when I think about a difficulty that I'm having, the more I think, the more I'll be able to get out of it. I often say, worrying is like a rocking chair. It keeps you going, but takes you nowhere. You sit in one place and you keep rocking, thinking about the same problem again and again and again and again. It doesn't really take you anywhere. In fact, there is a very interesting statistics about worry. It says 60% of the things we worry about never take place. Can you imagine? 60% of the things we worry about never take place. 15% of the things we worry about have already taken place. 17% of the things we worry about are people we can never change. And it's only 8% of the things we worry about are real problems. But unfortunately, so much of human energy goes into the 92% that we can't do anything about. But we never really reach the 8% that we can do something about. This is the problem with worry. There is a very interesting series of statements, 3 statements that I came across, which I felt defines humanity today. These human life in 3 statements. If you want to know what they are, these are the 3 statements. The first statement is, people spend money that they don't have. How do you spend money that you don't have? Credit cards, loans, in so many ways. People spend money that they don't have to buy things that they don't need. 90% of the things that we really buy, do we really need them? Many people today shop out of stress. This is one of the forms of dealing with stress. Shop. So people spend money that they don't have to buy things that they don't need. And the third one is the worst. To impress people that they don't like. I'll repeat it. People spend money that they don't have to buy things that they don't need to impress people that they don't like. Naturally, there is going to be a resultant so much worry that we have to deal with, so much anxiety that we have to deal with. So here are some thoughts that can help you deal with worries in a very interesting way. Some of these thoughts you might say, oh, I already knew. But I often tell people, the solutions to the most difficult problems of life is actually just common sense. But unfortunately today, common sense is not so common. Therefore we have to do seminars about what is common sense, right? So here are some thoughts that can really help you see life, see difficulties from a totally different box. The first thought is, mind your mind. The Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, mind can turn heaven into hell or hell into heaven, depending on how you perceive it. Most of us, we tend to give the remote control of our life to somebody else. Somebody presses a button and you start crying. Somebody presses a button and you start laughing. Somebody presses a button and you're happy. Somebody else presses a button and you're sad. So we need to understand that we shouldn't give the remote control of our life to somebody else. Why should others control the temperature of our lives? I'll tell you a story. Here is a very interesting story about how our mind behaves. It's a very subtle story. It's a small story, but it's a very subtle story. Pay attention, you may miss the point. So there was a small boy who wanted to have a holiday from his school. So he decided to play a prank. So what he did was, after the school hours, he went back to the school and he took along with him 3 sheep, 3 lambs. And he numbered these 3 lambs. He numbered the first sheep as number 1. He put the number 2 on the second sheep. And on the third sheep, he put the number 4. And he sent the sheep into the school. And he went back home, had fun. The next day morning, when the cleaners and the staff came, they found that all over the school there was sheep litter, And they were worried, what is this sheep doing inside the school? They ran around, they found 3 sheep. Number 1, number 2, and number 4. They all began to panic. Where is the number 3 sheep that is missing? They searched the entire school and they just couldn't find the number 3 sheep that is missing. They declared a holiday, emergency. There is a sheep roaming around in the school. We may laugh at these people, but this is exactly what we do in our lives. All of us have a number 1, number 2, and number 4 as far as relationships are concerned. All of us have a number 1, number 2, and number 4. As far as wealth, as far as position in life, as far as education, as far as the basic gadgets that we need, we all have a number 1, number 2, and number 4. But we think happiness lies in the number 3 sheep that is missing from our life. Every boy is looking at every other girl, thinking that maybe this girl will satisfy my expectations. Every girl is looking at every other boy, thinking that maybe this boy will satisfy my expectations. But unfortunately, in the process of looking at others, we forget to look at the person that is actually there in our life already. The same thing with gadgets. As long as you see the gadgets on a billboard or on, television advertisements, they look fantastic. In fact, when you go to a showroom, even on the shelves, they look fantastic. But as soon as you buy them and come out of the shop, they look stupid. You always feel something else is better, The nature of the mind is to trick us to be dissatisfied with what you have and think that happiness lies in what you don't have. Mind always wants new things to feel happy. Mind is like water. Water is originally in the oceans. Water is not satisfied in the ocean. It evaporates and becomes clouds. It is not satisfied as clouds. It comes down as rains falls on the mountains. It is not satisfied on the mountains. It flows down as rivers. It is not satisfied as a river. It goes back into the ocean where it started from. The nature of the mind is to be completely dissatisfied and look for something or the other in terms of expectations. I don't know if you all have ever seen elephants. I don't know if Australia has elephants. There is a very interesting way in which elephants are caught in India and the way they are trained in India. This has a lot to do with the way our mind works. When an elephant is very small, it's caught and tied up with a big, thick chain. And the elephant is tied up and tied to a pole, which is very thick and very strongly connected to the ground. So when the elephant is newly caught, it just goes crazy. It wants its freedom. It pulls, it pushes, it bangs. No matter how much it puts energy, it's not able to get out of those chains because the chains are thick and the pole to which it is tied is thick. So the elephant, at some point, it gets bruised, it gets injured, then it gives up. Once the elephant gives up, mentally, it programs itself. It conditions itself to think, chain and pole means I can't do anything. Chain and pole means I can't do anything. So as the elephant grows up, the size of the chain decreases. The size of the pole decreases. But the elephant never ever attempts to try to get out of the chain and the pole ever again. Because it has conditioned itself to think that chain and pole means I can't do anything. And now when the elephant is big, it's huge. It's powerful. It can, destroy an entire building. But the elephant is always tied by a small chain to a small pole. But the elephant never tries. Because for him, chain and pole means I can't do anything. So essentially, these are known as mental shackles. All of us, just like this elephant, have put ourselves into certain mental shackles. And for us, if we don't have this, and this, it means that we can't do anything. And therefore, a human mind always looks for some alternative to find happiness. And it never looks for happiness within. It never seems to find satisfaction with what he or she has. Unfortunately, the way we look at everything around us depends on how we are. There is something known as the lens principle. The lens principle says, who you are determines what you see. Depending on what kind of a person you are, that's what you see in others. The Mahabharata, it speaks about a very interesting story. A teacher whose name is Dronacharya, he calls two of his students. The first student he calls, his name is Duryodhan. He gives him an instruction. He tells him, go into the kingdom and find at least one person who is better than you. This man goes into the kingdom. He studies and speaks to hundreds and hundreds of people. And he comes back and he tells his teacher, I'm sorry, I couldn't even find one person who is better than me. And every person he saw, he found a defect that he didn't have. Surprising. In an entire kingdom, after meeting thousands of people, he couldn't even find one person who is better than him. Dronacharya asked his second student, whose name was Yudhishthir, to go into the kingdom and at least find one person who is worse than him. Yudhishthir again went into the kingdom. And after speaking to thousands and thousands of people, he came back and he said, I'm sorry, I couldn't even find one person worse than me. Because every person I saw had one good quality which I didn't have. He had a list of names and he had a list of good qualities. Same kingdom, same people. But one was only able to see defects and one was only able to see good. The understanding is that our analysis of others are expressions of our own needs and values. When we look at somebody else and say, this person is like this, we're actually looking at our own selves. This is known as the lens principle. That means, before you see somebody else, you have to understand you have a lens based on which we analyze others. Those lenses are essentially lenses of our own needs and values. Someone who likes to dress well, if you look at somebody else, the first thing you notice is, how is this person dressed? Somebody who is very intelligent, when he looks at the other person, the first thing you notice is how intelligent and sharp that person is, based on his speech, based on his body language. Somebody who loves hairstyle looks at somebody else and just looks at what's the hairstyle first. So essentially, who you are determines what you see. The second thing is, who you are determines how you see others. There was an old man who was standing in the entrance of a village. A traveler came and stopped at the entrance of the village and asked this old man, how are the people in this village? The old man in turn asked him a question. He said, how are the people from the village you came from? This man said, most stupid, arrogant, idiotic, and useless people I have ever met. The old man said, same here. And this man went in frustrated. After some time, another man came and stopped near the same old man and asked him the same question. How are the people in this village? The old man asked him the same question. How are the people in the village you came from? He said, the most kindest, the most sweetest, the most helping, compassionate people I've ever met in my life. The old man said, same here. Same village, same old man, but why is he telling two different things? Who you are determines how you see others. The way you see others is a reflection of your own values. If you are a very trusting person, you see others as very trusting. If you are a very critical person, you tend to see others as very critical. If you are a very caring person, you tend to see others as very caring. And the third thing in the lens principle is, who you are determines how you see life. There was a grandfather who was sleeping on an easy chair. And his grandson, a small boy, he wanted to play a prank on his grandfather. He went from behind, he took a piece of old smelly cheese and he put it on the mustache of the grandfather. And he went and hid. The grandfather got up after some time and he started smelling. He said, this room is stinking today. He went to the next room. He said, this room also is stinking today. He went all around the house. He said, the whole house is stinking today. And then he went outside the house. He said, the world is stinking today. Where was the stink? It was below his nose, practically. So who you are determines how you see life. We have a personal frame of reference that consists of our attitudes, our assumptions, the way we treat people, and the way we treat life. Who you are determines what you see. Who you are determines how you see others. And who you are determines how you see life. Here is a very small video, which is a very revealing video that might just tell you what I'm trying to tell in a very powerful way. Look at it and we will continue discussing. So essentially, the lens principle is about who you are determines what you see. Many times, the way we perceive people is a lot based on the mindset that we have. A lot of worries, a lot of anxieties is based on how the mind perceives these problems, perceives these people, perceives the situations in our lives. So the first thing is mind your mind. The second thing is known as develop positivity. Many times in life, in the most negative situation, there may be a seed of positivity in it. Unfortunately, when it comes to negativity in our lives, it becomes very difficult to handle negativity. I'll tell you a story. There was a man who came into an audience, and it's like a big auditorium, and he said, I'm going to tell you all a joke. And he began telling. He said, there was a man named Luigi, and Luigi was celebrating his 50th anniversary. And people in the audience wanted to know, what is the secret of your long-lasting marriage? And Luigi said, the secret of my long-lasting marriage is that I'm very kind and respectful to my wife. And when we were celebrating our 20th anniversary, I took her to Rome. And when we were celebrating our 50th anniversary, I'm going to get her back. So everybody in the audience started laughing. What a joke. It was really nice. And after a minute, this man repeated the same joke all over again. He said, there was a man named Luigi, and he was celebrating his 50th anniversary. And everyone wanted to know what is the secret of his long-lasting marriage. And Luigi said, the secret of my long-lasting marriage is that I'm very respectful and kind to my wife. And when we were celebrating our 20th anniversary, I took her to Rome. Celebrating her 50th anniversary, I got her back. The people who didn't understand the joke the first time, they laughed the second time. After a minute, this man cracked the same joke again. There was a man named Luigi. He was celebrating his 50th anniversary. I mean, people were getting irritated, Somehow they tolerated the third time, After a minute, he cracked the same joke again, fourth time. So by this time, people were like really, at their wits' end. They didn't understand what this guy is trying to do. After a minute, he cracked the same joke another time, fifth time. People were pulling out their hair by this time, really frustrated. And finally, this man spoke something that hit them really hard. You know what he said? This man said, if we don't laugh over the same joke again and again, why do we cry over the same sorrow again and again? When it comes to jokes, when it comes to laughter, there is a limit how much you can handle the same thing. You need variety. You need different things. But when it comes to sadness, we become experts in crying over the same problem. And in fact, we can cry over the same problem for decades together also, and still feel it is fresh. Still feel it is completely a new problem. You still feel that it is completely something that I can handle it for another 20 years. So essentially, there are a lot of things that are not in our hand. There are a lot of things that we just cannot do anything about. And therefore, the only thing we can do something in such situations in life is learn to see hope when there is none. There was a man who was shipwrecked, and he fell into an island, deserted island. And he decided that somehow or the other he's going to survive here. So he built a small hut for himself and he started looking around, found a few fruits, and he somehow made his living. He took a watermelon, he found a watermelon somewhere. He cut out a human face on the watermelon and he was having conversations with the watermelon, to keep himself busy. Over a period of time, he kind of settled down in the island. One day he had gone out to find food. When he came back, he found his whole hut was burning. This man broke down. This is too much. First of all, I am deserted in an island like this. And on top of that, somehow or the other, I made my living. I kind of readjusted with life, and now this is it to happen. Just when he was crying desperately, a ship came by. And they told him, we saw smoke over here and we knew somebody definitely needed help over here. The very thing that he depended on, the very house that he depended on, it became the source of his, solution to his problem. What we really need to do is learn to accept the realities of life. There is a big gap between our expectation and realities. Our expectations are sky high and the realities are ground level. The bigger the gap between expectation and reality, the more there is stress. We need to learn to align our expectation with the realities of life. All of us have certain personalities and skills. But most of the times, we become dissatisfied with what we have and look for what we don't have. One time there was an Olympic competition of animals. All the animals in the jungle participated in this Olympic competition. And in this Olympic competition, there was an elephant who was very, very enthusiastic to participate, And this elephant chose to participate in a running race, athletic, competition. And there was a cheetah, there was a kangaroo, there was a rabbit, there was a deer. There were so many animals competing. And this elephant also participated. When the race got over, naturally who won? The cheetah, because it's the fastest animal. The elephant became very sad. The elephant decided, I am going to practice more next year and I'm going to win it. So for one whole year, he was going through jogging practices, weight loss programs, and he did so many things, And after the whole year got over, the next year he participated again in the running race. And guess who won? The cheetah. The elephant went into a permanent depression, Most people are like this elephant. Rather than accepting the realities of life and aligning with the realities of life, they have high expectations from some aspect in life. When we accept the realities of life and align our expectation with the realities of life, life becomes very peaceful. Instead of participating in a running race, if the elephant had participated in a weightlifting competition or a wrestling competition, there was no way somebody else could have won. Acceptance and non-acceptance. Acceptance keeps one emotionally tranquil, and non-acceptance keeps one emotionally agitated. If something is happening not the way I want, if I accept it, it becomes tolerance. If I don't accept it, it becomes anger. Fear is due to uncertainty in life. If I face uncertainty, it causes fear. For most people, when uncertainty is dealt with acceptance, it doesn't cause fear, it is known as adventure. Bungee jumping, lot of uncertainty, right? Water rafting, lot of uncertainty. Paragliding, lot of uncertainty, Jumping off flights, a lot of uncertainty. But when uncertainty is dealt with acceptance, it's not called fear, it's called as adventure. But when the same uncertainty you deal with non-acceptance, it becomes fear. If someone has something that I don't have, or if someone is able to achieve something that I'm not able to achieve, if I accept it, it becomes inspiration. And if I don't accept it, it becomes jealousy. If someone has hurt us, and if you're not able to accept it, it becomes hatred. And if you're able to accept it, it becomes forgiveness. So anything when handled with non-acceptance becomes a negative emotion, And when the same thing is handled with acceptance, it becomes a positive emotion. And therefore, it is very important that every human being learns to align our expectations with the realities of life. The bigger the gap between expectation and reality, the greater is the stress. Therefore, it is very important to learn to align expectation with the realities of life. The fourth thing is a very important thought. I'm going to give you all two examples of two plants. The first plant is a garden fern. Now, ferns are small plants and they grow very fast. If you plant a seed of a garden fern, within 3 months it grows into a full-fledged plant. The second plant is known as the Chinese bamboo. The Chinese bamboo has some very interesting qualities. If you plant the seed of a Chinese bamboo, for the first 1 month nothing grows. Second month also nothing grows. First 1 full year nothing grows. In fact, 2 full years nothing grows. In fact, even after 3 years, nothing grows. Can you imagine? You keep watering a plant. For 3 years, nothing grows out of the ground. But after 3 years, in a matter of 3 weeks, it grows into 100 feet into height. The question is, between a Chinese bamboo and a garden fern, which is better? Is a Chinese bamboo better or a garden fern better? You can't compare. The Chinese bamboo has its strength, the garden fern has its strength. The Chinese bamboo has its weakness, the garden fern has its weakness. And therefore, the more we compare one another, the more we compare ourselves with somebody else, the more frustrating life becomes. Essentially, competition is become a trend in life. People just love to compare themselves with somebody else. Constantly. Comparison has become a disease. The number of likes on Facebook, number of followers you have on Twitter, the number of posts that you put on Instagram every day. I mean, the number of selfies that you can click in a day. There's no end to competition. There's no end to comparisons. People go to an extent, like when somebody has a small child that is born. Many times people get their small children to me. And the first question they ask me is, whom does a child look like, mother or father? I tell them the child neither looks like mother nor like father. Child looks like himself or herself. The day a child is born, you start comparing. So naturally, that whole concept of comparison becomes ingrained in the mind of a child. And therefore, it is very important we learn to appreciate one another's strengths, and rather than comparing ourselves with somebody else, it is important to understand that all of us are different. The concept of competition and the concept of comparison is so prevalent today. There was a lady who was a very rich lady, and she had a fever, a very high fever. She had 101 fever. So the doctor came to see her, and he said, you have 101 fever and these are the medicines. In the same house, there was a servant, another lady, who also had fever. So after seeing this, this rich lady, the doctor went to the servant to inspect. And the doctor said, the servant has 104 fever. This rich lady, when she came to know her servant has 104 and she only has 101, she said, impossible. The servant cannot have anything more than me. Comparison is such a disease. And the mind gets no satisfaction if I have something less than somebody else. Constantly compare again and again and again. We have to remember, all of us are like tools in a toolbox. In a toolbox, every tool is irreplaceable. The work of a hammer cannot be done by a screwdriver. The work of a screwdriver cannot be done by a jack. All the tools in the toolbox are different, are meant for different purposes. Similarly, every human being is different and is meant for a different purpose. There are 2 ways to be unhappy in life. Most people will tell you 2 ways to be happy in life. And I'm telling you 2 ways to be unhappy in life. And I can give you a guarantee, if you follow these 2 ways, you will surely be unhappy in life. The first way to be unhappy in life is, try to make everybody happy. If you try to make everybody happy, there will be one person who will be unhappy, that is you. If Jesus Christ and Krishna could not make everybody happy, what to speak of you and me? I mean, there were some people who were dissatisfied. Mahatma Gandhi, such a powerful person, he did so much to the world, but still somebody was dissatisfied with him. If you try to make everybody happy, one person will surely be unhappy, and that is you. The second way to be unhappy is, try to make everybody happy with you. If 99 people are happy with you and one fellow is unhappy, you will remain unhappy. You will think, why that one fellow is unhappy? Like recently, I was talking to a young boy. And this boy, he made his first YouTube video. And he was thrilled. When he uploaded it, he was excited. But he had a problem. 99 people did this. They liked his YouTube video. And one person did this. This boy went into a depression. Why did that one person do this to me? He went into a depression. He just couldn't handle it. So essentially, when you try to make everyone happy with you, and you know someone is unhappy, you become unhappy. I should give myself the freedom to be happy with myself, independent of whether the world is happy with me or no. When you take a mango and you squeeze it, what comes out? It's mango juice. You take an orange and you squeeze it, what comes out will be orange juice. What is inside, only that will come out. You can't squeeze a mango and expect orange juice to come out. When life squeezes you, what is inside you only will come out. You can't expect something else to come out. So essentially, most people define themselves by the way they look. They define themselves by the length of their hair, the color of their skin, the sharpness of their nose, so on and so forth. Essentially, once you start doing something valuable in life, once you start doing something worthwhile in life, nobody looks at you. Mother Teresa, is she the most beautiful person in the world? No. Mahatma Gandhi, is he the most beautiful person in the world? No. Nelson Mandela, is he the most handsome person in the world? Not really. Srila Prabhupada, is he the most beautiful person in the world? No. Some of the people that are remembered in the world the most are not really the people who look the most beautiful. In fact, when somebody starts contributing something substantial in life, nobody looks at you. A perfume bottle is very beautiful to look at. In fact, the most beautiful bottles are the perfume bottles. Just because the perfume bottle is beautiful to look at, can you drink the contents of it? If you drink a perfume bottle, you will die. So essentially, not everything that looks good externally is good internally. And those things that are very useful internally or have depth internally, nobody looks at it externally. And therefore, once you contribute something substantial in your life, nobody looks at you. We need to give ourselves the freedom to do something in such a way that we can make a transformation, a big difference in the world. And then you don't need to compare yourself with somebody else. The fifth thought that I would like to leave you all with is a very important thought, which is known as choose to respond and not react. I tell this story from the Ramayana, which is a very, very powerful story that we should definitely know in life. This is a story of the section of the Ramayana where Ram, Lakshmana and Sita, they are in the forest. And when they are in the forest, a golden deer comes. And Mother Sita, she tells Ram, go and get me this deer. Ram goes away. He tells his brother Lakshman, take care of Sita. I'll come back. So when Ram is away and he is chasing this golden deer is actually a demon who is disguised as a golden deer. He's a demon named Marich. And at a certain point, Ram realizes it's not a deer, it's a demon. He shoots an arrow and kills the demon. But this demon, when he is dying, in the voice of Ram, he calls out to Lakshman and Sita for help. And he dies. So here, in the meanwhile, Sita, when she hears the voice of Ram calling out for help, She panics. She becomes very concerned about Ram. She tells her brother-in-law, Lakshman, go and help your brother. Ram is in trouble. Lakshman is not affected at all. Lakshman tells Sita, don't worry. Ram can take care of himself. I have great confidence in Ram. But Sita just doesn't believe Lakshman. She tells him, go, you have to go now. And Lakshman tells her, don't worry, everything is fine. At some point, Sita loses patience. She pushes him, and after some time, she loses patience and she tells him something that really hurts Lakshman. So here's a scenario where two people, both of them love Ram. One is concerned about Ram and one is confident about Ram. The greatest stress in this world, the greatest sources of worry in this world is relationships. There's nothing more worrisome than someone who misunderstands you. There is nothing more worrisome than somebody whom you love, somebody whom you have given your life to, somebody whom you have been loyal to all your life misunderstands you. And here is Lakshman. For 13 long years he has been serving Ram and Sita, given up his family, given up the comforts, given up the company of his beautiful wife, and he's in the forest serving these two people. And Sita, when she sees that Lakshman is not going to help Ram, you know what she tells Lakshman? She tells him, I know why you're here. You're waiting for an opportunity that Ram goes away so that you can enjoy me. Sita doubts his character. Lakshman is so hurt. Lakshman tells her, I'm going away from here, but I can tell you for sure, when I come back, you won't be here. Lakshman goes away and he meets his brother Ram in the forest. The first thing Ram asks him is, who told you to come here? I told you to guard Sita. What are you doing here? Then both of them come back and see Sita is missing. Then Ram goes crazy. Ram starts abusing Lakshman like anything. He tells him, what nonsense. I told you to do one thing, you couldn't do that one thing also. And he says, you are useless. You have no competence to do anything in life. Can you imagine? The two people that he loved the most, two people that he gave his youth to, two people that he gave everything to. One is doubting his competence and the other is doubting his character. If it was anybody else in Lakshman's place, they would have said, hell with both of them. I'll go back, to my family, I'll go back to my wife. But Lakshman continued serving both of them in spite of this. The degree of insult is most felt when the person who insults you is the person you love the most. When some stranger insults you, it's not so painful. I mean, imagine some beggar on the street or some person who you're just not concerned with. You bump into him on the street and that person insults you, gives you 2 or 3 bad words and goes away. What do you care? It doesn't make any difference to you. But somebody whom you love the most, if that person insults you, the pain is the most. 30 years of love can get destroyed in 30 seconds if you don't know what to do in such situations in life. And I'll tell you, all of us go through such situations invariably, sometime or the other. And the question is, how do you deal with it? That's what we can learn from Lakshman. What Lakshman did in this situation is what I call as press the pause button. Let me clarify. When an action movie is going on and a phone rings, you don't want to miss any part of the action. What do? Press the pause button. Yeah. So that you can continue. Lakshman, when Sita spoke those words, those very intensely heavy words, Lakshman pressed the pause button. And he asked himself a question. The question that he asked himself is, does Sita actually mean what she spoke? And the answer that he got was, no. Sita doesn't mean what she spoke. Her concern for Ram is coming out in the form of those words. And when Ram spoke those words, again Lakshman pressed the pause button. And he asked himself the same question. Does Ram mean what he spoke? And the answer that he got was no. His concern for Sita is coming out in the form of those words. The question here now, whenever I tell the story, many people tell me this, that during such complicated phases, when somebody insults you so badly, Forget pressing the pause button. You don't know where the remote control is also, It's so much of pressure. You just can't, you just feel like retaliating immediately. You feel like what is wrong, reacting immediately. Slashing with a sword. What inspired Lakshman to press the pause button? And if you study Lakshman's life, Lakshman was an angry young man all his life. At the drop of the hat, he would get angry. So it's not that he was like a cool person all the time, And in this incident also he acted cool. It's not like that. He was always a hot-headed person. He was always an angry person. But in this one incident, he acted very maturely. What made Lakshman, who was so volatile, act so maturely here? One thought. One thought in Lakshman's mind helped him act so maturely in this particular incident. What was that one thought? The thought that Lakshman had was, when Sita spoke those words, the first thought that Lakshman had was, should I forget to be grateful for 25 years of love that Sita has deposited in this relationship for this one withdrawal, one mistake that she made? And when Ram spoke those words, again this one thought that was in his mind was, should I forget to be grateful for the 40 years of love that Ram has deposited in this relationship for this one withdrawal or one mistake that he made? That one thought of gratitude helped Lakshman press the pause button. All of us in our lives, we are going to face crisis in relationships every time. We are going to face people who speak something that really hurts us every time. The question that we would ask ourselves when we go through such phases in our life is, do we want to forget to be grateful for all those years of deposit of love, to remember this one phase or one mistake that somebody has done to us? Generally, our mind is so blank in such times. Our mind is so filled with hatred in such times. Our mind is so much filled with self-obsession in such times, we can never think of being grateful for what has already been done in the relationship. And therefore, as I said, 30 years of relationship can get destroyed in 30 seconds if this one thought of gratitude is not there in the mind. And therefore, from Lakshman, we can learn how to press the pause button. When somebody says something very insulting, something very, very tough for the heart to handle, press the pause button for 1 second. Before words come out from your mouth. Most people speak and then think. That's called reacting. But when you think and then speak, it is called as responding. What we need to do to make relationships last, what we need to do to not allow the stress or the worries of relationship to pile on our minds is learn to respond and not react. A very important thought that I would like to also leave you all with. There will be many problems or many worries that you will come across in life that don't have solutions. When you come across a worry that doesn't have solution, what do? It is said, download your worries and get online with God. Here is a small story that might help you. One time, there was a man who was on his deathbed. And just when he was dying, he called his lawyers and he told his lawyer that I want to make a will. And the will that he made was very simple. His will was, I want to divide my property into 3 parts. Half of my property, I want to give it to my sons. 1/4 of my property, I want to give it to my relatives. And 1/5 of my property, I want to give it to a local trust and charity. This man died. After he died, the lawyers found out his property was 19 horses. That's all. 19 horses. Now they were in anxiety, confusion. How do you divide 19 horses into half and 1/4 and 1/5, They tried their best. They just couldn't figure it out. They called the logicians and mathematicians of the village. And all of them put their brains into it, all kinds of logics and all kinds of arithmetics and calculations and all that. In the end, they came to a conclusion. The only way we can divide the property according to his will is, if we cut 2 or 3 horses into half, and then we can divide the property, 1/2 and 1/4 and 1/5. They were actually going to do it. Exactly at that time, a very wise man happened to come by. And he came riding his horse. So he asked the people in the village, what is the commotion? What's happening? And they told him, it's a very complicated problem. He said, please tell me, I can help you. Then finally they told him the problem. He said, such a simple thing, I'll help you solve it. They were bewildered. The biggest of logicians and mathematicians couldn't help solve the problem. This man got off his horse. He put his horse into the 19 horses. He said, now divide. Now there were 20 horses. Divide into half. 10 horses they gave it to the sons. He said, divide again. 1/4. 4 horses they gave it to the relatives. And then he took back his own horse, and the 5 horses that were remaining were given to the local trust. The problem was solved. So easily. The people were so bewildered. They said, how did you solve such a complex problem so easily? And this man made a statement which is very profound. This man said, whenever you come across a problem that logic and reasoning is not able to solve, that time you bring the 20th horse in, God. And then you will find a solution coming which you never think it's possible at all. All of us, we will face problems where we don't have solutions logically and with our own reasoning. No matter how much you think, some problems cannot be solved by just thinking. Whenever you come across problems in life where you feel your own logic, reasoning, intelligence is going to fall short, that is a time to add the 20th horse in. Take shelter of prayers. And finally, the last thought that I would like to leave you all with, how to stop worrying and start living, is one of the most important thoughts that every human being should know. This is a thought which is about selflessness. Psychologists and psychiatrists, they point out the biggest reason for worry in this world is self-centeredness, selfishness. Whenever I come across people who are depressed, whenever I come across people who are highly in anxiety and depression, one of the things that, according to me, my analysis is that oftentimes the most depressed people are also the most selfish people. Let me repeat. Oftentimes, the most depressed people are also the most selfish people. You know why? A person who is depressed, what is the proof somebody is depressed? Here is a psychological test. How you can know if somebody is depressed or no. And many people who come to me saying that I'm depressed, this is one of the things I test first. I tell them first. I give them a bag, a box of sweets or something like that. I tell them, go and give this to somebody, poor people or needy. The moment I give a box to these people and tell them to distribute it, you know what they say? I am so frustrated and you're telling me to give this to somebody else? First help me solve my problem. Essentially, they are so much into their own world, they're so much into their own, my problems, my worries, my anxieties, me. Self-centeredness is one of the greatest causes of depression. One thing that every person who feels depressed should do is do something selfless. Take some time off to serve others. In fact, one of the greatest solutions for depression, beyond the medicines, beyond all the treatment and counseling and all that, is service. If people can take out some time every day, at least every week, to do something selfless. What is the meaning of selfless? Selfless means you get nothing in return, including appreciation. Most people, when they do something selfless, they do it for something in return, especially appreciation. They may not want anything in monetary terms or anything like that, but they want things in appreciation, acknowledgement, and things like that. One of the greatest things that a human being can do to deal with worry, deal with stress, is take some time off, just doing something selfless for somebody else. Doing something so selfless that the person whom you're doing it for may not even know that you're doing it for that person. Here is a small video that will really bring this thought into your mind, and it will make you very thoughtful about this concept of giving. There's a great joy in giving, especially when you give something where you get nothing in return. That brings in great satisfaction. In today's time and age, in an age where there is so much worry, there is so much anxiety, and there is so much stress that people go through, something that is missing in this world is sharing. Just to conclude everything I spoke today, I spoke about these 7 solutions to stop worrying and start living. Mind your mind was the first thing. I spoke about the story of those 3 sheep, number 1, number 2, and number 4. How the mind is never satisfied with what it has and is also always looking for what it doesn't have. I was speaking about how one should bring in satisfaction in one's life to stop worrying and start living. Then second, I spoke about developing positivity. Here I spoke about the story of Luigi. I spoke about how we don't laugh over the same joke again and again. Why do we cry over the same misery again and again? And then I spoke about how one should align one's expectations with the realities of life. And here I spoke about how sometimes our expectations are so sky high that it seldom matches with the realities of who we really are. I spoke about the elephant that is participating in the running race. And then I spoke about how one should avoid unhealthy comparisons. Here I spoke about the Chinese bamboo and the garden fern, how each one of us are uniquely different creations of God. And each one of us, rather than focusing on our weaknesses, what is missing in us, we should focus on our strength, what we really have in life. And then we spoke about choose to respond and not react. Here I spoke about the story of Lakshman, who pressed the pause button. And here we spoke about how one should think before one speaks, especially when it comes to important relationships in life. There's one thought of gratitude that Lakshman showed is something that we should consider. Then we spoke about having faith in God. Here I spoke about the story of the 19 horses, how when we go through difficulties in life, or rather when we come across problems in life that logic and reasoning is not able to help us solve, that time we bring the 20th horse in, which is God. And then finally we spoke about service to others. And I said about how depression is actually one form of selfishness, when we really think too much about ourselves, we're so much into ourselves that we really have no time for somebody else. And I spoke about how serving others, sharing, and being selfless is a solution to stop worrying and start living. Thank you very much.